One fateful night in 1960, two tanker barges collided on the River Severn, claiming the lives of 5 sailors. Chris Witts, who was working as a deckhand, witnessed the disaster, which resulted in the demolition of the Severn Rail Bridge.
And suddenly there's this big whoomph, and we look ahead towards where the sound was, and we saw this big orange glow, so fierce it was burning off the fog. And we all managed to get into Sharpness safe and sound, apart from these two. The Arkendale H who had come up from Swansea with a cargo of black oil, skipper George Thompson, and the Wastdale H with a cargo of petrol, skipper James Dew. And sadly, the big tide got hold of the two vessels and pushed them sideways up towards the Severn Railway Bridge.
They hit Pier 17, and in doing so brought that span down. That came down, collapsed on the vessels itself, and sadly 5 men went into the river. Now at that time it was actually completely, from one bank to the other, was burning. George
Goes back aft to his men. He knows they're on fire, they're sinking as well, and 2 of his crewmen are stood on the stern end. They were non-swimmers, frightened to death. George gives them a life ring each and says, "Jump, we've got to get off."
So actually there was a rescue that night. It took place right behind me here in this reen. A boat was launched here, and it was actually 2 lads, Charlie Henderson and Tommy Carter.
They picked a man up, Jack Cooper, who's on the sand. He was gripping to a stake on the sandbank, and his feet were on there, and he was holding on for dear life. And they picked him up and they saved him. But poor old Jack, he was in great pain because he had a great gash in his back when he had leapt off the Arkendale H.
5 of these lads went into the river, and unfortunately they perished. There were 3 survivors in actual fact. One, the White House across the way there. That's one of the lads actually managed to come out. He was drawn by the lights of the house, and as a result of which he swam over there.
An emergency call was put in, and the fire brigade were mobilised both sides of the river. And you had stations this side, Wootton Under Edge, Dursley and Stroud. They mobilised their appliances and they came down. And as I said, the river was ablaze. And the chief officer turned up, and he denied the men permission to do any firefighting because they didn't have a fireboat, which would have been useless anyway with the river ablaze. So the men could only stand by and basically watch and make sure that nothing happened on the shore. Daylight next day, fire service had to go out to the wrecks at low water to check, searching for missing crewmen. To get out there, they had to walk through the mud, carrying ladders, portable pumps, hoses, etc. And it was a hell of a job. They were out there purely to look for missing crewmen. 5 men had been killed that night, and they weren't on the craft. They didn't find them. The army then came and blew holes in what is now the wrecks to make sure that they wouldn't suddenly get lifted on a big tide and float away. They wanted them to remain where they were.
British Rail, despite the fact that was that huge, great amount of damage, they continued to strengthen it. They continued to strengthen the bridge till about 1960, about 61, I think. And it was at that time that the bridge was further struck by a vessel called the BP Explorer. Now the BP Explorer had turned turtle on the sandbar across the way. As I say, this river is immensely treacherous. It really is. Anyway, the loss of the BP Explorer, of course, turning turtle now with no one at the helm. She came up on the tide. She struck Pier 16, can you believe? I mean, what was the chances? There was a huge great opening she could have went through, but no, she did a further £28,000 worth of damage to the bridge. And it was that, I believe, was the death knell.
We had the 5 families who obviously missing their loved ones. So it was their lives were wrecked. And I know for a fact, because over the years, I've met the family members, and Malcolm Hart, who was a year older than me. Only recently, I met his 2 sisters, They told me how their lives were wrecked, losing their brother and the parents losing their son. And George, I know from personal experience, George, again, was a broken man inside. Although he told me this story on a regular basis, he became quite emotional as the years went on, telling me the story.